what's Ben Shapiro have to say about, say, Immanuel Kant? He wrote a book, which I have unfortunately read from cover to cover, called The Right Side of History: How Reason and Moral Purpose Made the West Great. And we talked a little bit about some other stuff in this book a while back on a night when Jen was sick and Ryan Lake was substituting.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Ryan, for the philosophy segment at the end of the show. And, we talked about some of the things that, yeah, exactly. Munker Dud 2108 says, I don't know, but he sure says it real fast.
Probably loud, too.
Yeah, so his big contention in this book is that what makes Western civilization so uniquely wonderful, it's a little unclear to me what he's contrasted it to, like is Chinese civilization really bad, like well, what are the ones that aren't so great? He never quite spells that out. But part of what makes Western civilization so wonderful, according to Ben Shapiro, are the combination of Judeo-Christian, religiosity. He uses that phrase Judeo-Christian a lot, so I guess Judaism and Christianity are the good religions, and what he calls Greek natural law reasoning. And it's a little unclear sometimes which Greeks he's talking about here exactly, but he says some Greeks or other, believed in natural law morality and read like the purpose for which things exist off of their natural behavior and somehow glean morality from that. And he thinks a lot of modern stuff is bad because it's getting away from those two things. And so, for example, he talks about Immanuel Kant. So let's see what he says about him. You want to read this or should
I? Go ahead.
All right. Kant thought that the search for virtue could be found not through reason applied to the universe, but through investigation of the moral instincts. We all have an instinct for morality, Kant believed. Reason was limited as human perception was limited. Kant remained skeptical of the human capacity to know the world. But looking at our moral instinct, Kant believed that we could derive a universal morality. This is my favorite sentence, possibly in the book. Kant thus embarked on an almost Platonic quest for knowledge beyond the material. But where Plato looked to the realm of forms, Kant looked instead
to the human heart. As we know, Kant was all about the human heart.
Yeah, this is a pretty strange passage. We could save the other part for later, but so Kant went looking for morality in the human heart?
That is not how I remember it. That is not what I tell my students. Sorry, students, we left out the part about Kant and the human heart. Kant did not care about your heart.
Yeah. The reason this is very, very, very strange, and I don't know what that other Ben read in Kant that led him to think this, or what he read about Kant that led him to think this. This does sound like something that it would like show up in a paper or something. You'd be like, wait, what? Did I misread that? What's going on here? So Kant believes that morality is an extension of rationality.
Yes, that's the one thing that I try to drive home to my students. That's at the basis of all this, is that Kant is really in love with rationality. That's what's in his human heart, is rationality and the love for such. So this is all very confusing.
Yeah. So Kant's one principle of morality, the categorical imperative, says, and Kant has a couple different formulations of it. He says are equivalent. One of them is about not treating other people. Well, not treating humanity, whether your own person or that of another, as merely a means to an end, rather than
every philosopher got to pick an organ.
as an end in itself. And then the other one is only act on that maxim that you could will to be a universal law. What does that mean that you could will to be a universal law? What does Kant mean here? Because I think it's going to be important for
that it's possible.
Right. So not that you would like it.
Yeah, Kant doesn't care about what you would like. It's another thing I try to drive home to my students. Kant does not care. Anything that you could say, but no, he doesn't care. Yeah, so could just means like logically could.
Yeah. So don't only act on that maxim that you could will to be a universal law is only follow rules that it would be possible for everybody to follow, and in particular, it would be possible for everybody to follow without that undermining your reason for acting that way in the first place. So Kant thinks that you have like an incoherent set of motivations. I guess be one way to put that. If you're doing something for some purpose, but if everybody followed the rule that you're following, then that purpose that you're doing it for wouldn't be satisfied. Like I don't know, what's a good example of this?
Well, his own example that if you made a lying promise, then your intention is to make a promise, but then if everyone made lying promises, then no one would believe promises anymore. So you're willing that there both be and not be promises, and that's inconsistent.
Yeah.
So that is not a thing that you can rationally will.
Right, which is the key thing, that you can rationally will, right? Not that it would make you happy if it happened. Not that it's not how would you like it, if other people, if other people did that. This is not at all Kant's point.
This is not the golden rule.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the golden rule. And it's also not rule utilitarianism, which I think, as far as I can tell, it's really confusing. But the one other thing Ben Shapiro says in this book about Kant that gives some kind of clue as to what he thinks is going on here. Actually, there's also a line we didn't quote where he says this echoes the golden rule. But he says one other thing in the book that maybe helps make it clear what he thinks the categorical imperative is. So this is where he's making his big objection to it. So remember, Kant has gone on his quest into the human heart to find the essence of morality, but Shapiro thinks that it didn't work, that the quest was unsuccessful. That whatever he found in the human heart, has not told us what objective morality is, because he says, quote, Kant's categorical imperative isn't objectively mandatory. Why not simply assume that everyone else should abide by Kant's rule and break all the rules yourself? So I think what's going on there, as far
I'm glad you have an idea of what's going on there, because I sure don't.
This actually would be sad if at this point I've read and watched enough Ben Shapiro that to start to have some idea of what's going on there. That's not a sign that I've spent my life well, but I think maybe what's going on here is that he thinks that the point of the categorical imperative is you should act you should follow such and such rules, because if everybody followed those rules, then there would be like good consequences. Everybody would be happy, or
yay,
less suffering, or whatever. There's a better outcome in some way or another. That if that's not what he thinks it is, then I don't understand that last quote at all. But if he does think that's what it is, then I understand what's going on in the quote. But it's just a little. I don't know why he thinks that's what it is.
No, I don't know either.
So just to
the idea that it's not mandatory is just really. I don't even know what word to put on it, really.
Yeah, I mean, right. So
Because if you get anything from is that it is required of everybody. I mean, he even distinguishes between imperatives that are hypothetical, which apply to you, depending on the goals that you have, and this one, which applies to literally everybody, which to me sounds like mandatory.
Yeah, right. So Kant clearly thinks it's mandatory, and either Shapiro's saying something really super confusing, which is that, like, Kant doesn't think that, which would be bizarre if that's what he's saying, because Kant makes a very big deal of thinking that. Or what he's saying is, well, Kant thinks that this would be mandatory, but it's really not, because really some clever person could say, you can't fool me, Mr. Kant. I've figured it out, right? Like, I can.
Herr Kant.
Herr Professor Dr. Kant. I figured it out, right? I can just, like, jump the subway turnstile of morality here, and as long as everybody else follows these rules, then we'll have these good outcomes.
Especially for me.
Right, sure. Yeah. So I don't need to follow them myself. I'm actually going to be better off if I don't act morally, but everybody else does. Then that'll be the best for me. So why is this not a good objection to Kant? Or to rephrase that, maybe, like, the whole objection is premised on thinking that what Kant is saying is
I mean, it's not a good objection because it doesn't address anything in reality.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I do tell my students that their objections need to, address reality for them to be good ones.
Yeah, that's fair. I go along with that. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess maybe it's a good objection to the view he's made up in his head to argue with, but
well, who cares?
I don't think it's a good objection to Kant, right? Because Kant is not saying you should follow the categorical imperative, because if you follow the categorical, if everybody follows the categorical imperative, we'll have good consequences. That's really, really, really far from what he's saying.
Yes. Very much so, yes.
Like, utilitarianism says that hi
Shabazz. Oh, he has kitty litter on his nose.
Yeah, we'll see if he yeah, there you go. You can just see his tail there. So utilitarianism says that what makes things good is that they, what makes actions good is that they lead to good consequences. And
what makes actions right, I think you're trying to say.
Right. That is, sure. I mean, I also said Mr. Kant a minute ago. So
okay.
There you go. Got to set the bar low here. So, yeah, according to utilitarianism,
the good and the right are always lined up.
Right. So good consequences and right actions are always lined up. So not only, and they're not just lined up in the sense of like,
they are literally the same thing.
Right. Because
Shabazz has 2 Z's, by the way.
Yes. So I guess you could just have the view, like, I don't know, you do the right thing, then, like, God will always arrange it such that, it leads to good consequences or something. But, like, the utilitarian view is that literally what it is for something to be a right action is that it leads to good consequences, better consequences than any of the alternatives. That actions are morally better or worse than others, depending on whether the consequences are better or worse than others.
The consequences are better, the action is righter.
Is righter. Okay. You were giving me a hard time about saying good when I should have said right.
See, I'm trying to make you feel not so bad.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So Kant is saying something just radically different from that, right? Kant is saying that morality is not what the utilitarian thinks morality is. That morality is about rationality, like we were saying before. That the reason, so Kant, is a deontologist, which means that he thinks that actions are right or wrong in themselves. They're not right or wrong because of some consequence they'll lead to. They're not even right or wrong because of your reasons for doing them. Although he thinks that you only get moral credit for doing them if you have the right motivation. But the action itself is right as long as it follows the categorical imperative. It's wrong as long as it doesn't. And the thing that Kant thinks makes actions right or wrong is that he thinks that if you're
Sorry, Lucy's snoring.
Yeah, probably that's not making it through, but she is she does snore at a really.
Kathy says she needs a CPAP.
Right. So what makes morally better action? What makes morally right actions morally right? For Kant, is that it would be irrational not to. He thinks that's if you're not following the categorical imperative, that means that you're following a maxim that's not ultimately consistent, because either it wouldn't be possible for everybody to act that way, or it couldn't, or it wouldn't be, even if, or it wouldn't be possible for everybody to act that way consistent with your reason for acting that way. And so, he thinks that you should follow these rules.
Depup.
all the time, and that it is mandatory, not in the sense that, oh, you better do this or else we won't have good consequences, which is what Ben Shapiro seems to think, but it's mandatory in the sense that anybody who's not doing this is being irrational,
which is the worst thing you can be
if you're Kant.
Well, yeah.
According to Kant, that's the worst thing you could be. And there are lots and lots of good objections to this. That there are lots of people who have thought deeply about this who are not Kantians, and who have good reasons for not being Kantians, who either because some of the results of this are really counterintuitive. If the axe murderer comes to your door and says, who's the murder victim going to be?
You.
Okay. So Jen answers the door, and there's the guy standing there with the bloody axe, and says, "Is Ben here?" Jen, would be violating the categorical imperative if she lied to him.
Oh well.
And there are also good objections in the other direction about not the other direction, but a different direction about thinking okay, is this really what we morally value? Forget whether forget whether the particular actions that it tells you to do line up with what our intuitions about which actions you should do, but ask a more basic question. Is this what we think that being moral is? Is it really all about rationality purely? And you might think no, right? I mean, if I don't know, let's this time instead of having an axe murderer come to try to kill me, let's say I'm drowning and there's something that Jen could do to save me, and I think Bernard Williams talks about this. The one thought too many objection. So there's some life vest or something she could throw into the water to save me, and she pauses midair and says, "Hold on, is this rational to do? Let me just run through the categorical imperative in my head for a second and see." It's okay, let's see. If I didn't do this, would I be acting on a maxim that? All right, checks out. This is what I should do, right? Even if the whole process took 1/1,000,000th of a second, right, and it didn't make it any less likely that I'd be saved, I'd be kind of morally disturbed.
What if I tried to count up the utiles instead? Hang on, does it carry the one? Yeah.
Yeah. Utiles meaning units of happiness or unhappiness. That'd be the utilitarian version of this problem.
Either way, that's one thought too many.
Yeah, either way, it's one thought too many.
Or more than one.
Yeah, right.
Many thoughts too many.
At least one thought too many. Hi, Schmidt. So I think that there are lots of good reasons that Shapiro could have given for rejecting Kant's theory of morality that he didn't give here. But I guess my last thought about this before we're going to go to the post game a few minutes early is just this, which is, if you're going to write a book called The Right Side of History, How Reason and Moral Purpose Made the West Great, if you're going to do the thing that Ben Shapiro does, that Jordan Peterson does, that so many of these people do, and you're going to say that you're interested in defending Western civilization.
Hell yeah.
that you are worried that now that I don't even know that now that with the wokeness and the critical race theory and the feminism and the Marxism and everything.
Oh, that feminism.
That all of these terrible things are conspiring to undermine the traditional values of Western civilization. And you're really interested in defending the tradition of the West against these terrible influences. And by the way, it's always a little confusing that all the things that people list off when they're doing these rants, I don't know, if you're interested in defending the West against non-Western things, you should be mad about, I don't know, people becoming Buddhists or something. But
I know I am.
Yeah, I see about it every day. I wake up mad about that.
Is that why you wake up in such a bad mood?
Yeah, that's the reason. That's it. I wake up much earlier than you wouldn't know. All of those, if you're going to do that, then it seems to me that you should probably learn a little bit about the classics of the Western tradition. That if you're,
but you're asking too much, I think.
I don't know. It just sort of seems like if this is your big cause in life is defending this wonderful Western tradition, then I don't know, read some of it.
Yeah, sure.
My 2 cents. Anyway,
I also want to know if a confusion of bends, if that's a herd of cows and a murder of crows, a confusion of bends.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know where that was, but I
yeah,
saw it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's very demanding.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't actually seem that demanding to me. Like you don't actually have to write these books. You could just let them go unwritten. But if you are going to write them and you are going to pretend that this is what you you care very passionately about the traditions of the West, then I don't know, maybe look into them first. And just know some. Just know some. I mean, it's
just know something.
Just know something about this, right? It's like Charlie Kirk goes on and on and on about he loves listing the names of philosophers, and
being able to pass an intro class midterm.
And I've heard Charlie Kirk mention Plato at least 20 times in various contexts. That that because he loves listing. He likes thinking of himself as a great books person. He loves listing off, Plato, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, whatever. And then he's oh, and then oh, what do you think about the Euthyphro problem? He's what? And there's nothing wrong with not knowing what that is. I don't expect everybody in the world to know what that is. But like, if you're gonna, bring up Plato all the time, it seems like you should maybe read some Plato and find out what's in there. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive post-games on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.